we're going to go ahead and jump into chapter 6, which is about the American Revolution. And the first thing we come to is the Second Continental Congress. It happens May 10th of 1775 in Independence Hall, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The reason, once again, they're getting together in Philadelphia is that was the colony that was founded by the Quakers. It also means city of brotherly love. They accept and will take anybody. So it doesn't matter if you're coming from one of the New England states, one of the southern states, whatever. Philadelphia was the most accepting of any city out there at this time, and so they all meet in Philadelphia. Plus, it was one of the largest cities at that time. It's the same building. It's called Independence Hall, where they had the first Continental Congress. The guy that is going to lead this one is John Adams. John Adams, the reason they pick him is he is going to be the most level-headed to lead this, because I know the last chapter ends with the war is on. And for us, we know the war is on. But if you remember, the first time they got together at the Continental Congress, it was, how do we fix this? Guess what this time is? How do we fix this? We're not wanting just to jump away from England because that's our parent country. Just like when you get mad at your parents, you don't immediately think of running away. But if abuse and abuse and abuse kept happening, there would be the point you probably would. This is exactly what's going on. England is taxing, doing all these things, and it's building up. But even when we get together the second time, it's how do we fix this? And that's why John Adams is perfect for this. If you remember, he is the one at the Boston Massacre who will actually represent the British Redcoats when taken to trial. Even though everybody in Boston knows it did not go down like the trial is saying it did, they know the kid yelled fire, there was all this commotion. John Adams is the only one level-headed enough, even though he probably wanted to see these guys die, just like the rest of Boston, he was level-headed enough to say that's not right. And now we're about to look at King George and say, oops, sorry we killed 300 of you at this whole Lexington and Concord thing. And so we're going to need somebody level-headed that's going to think it through. And what I mean by we're trying to have peace is, if you notice, he sends out what's called the Olive Branch Petition. Olive Branch actually comes from the story in the Bible about Noah's Ark. When the ark rests and they send out a bird, it comes back with nothing, and then the bird comes back the next time with an olive branch. And that is symbolized in the Bible that God has made peace with man. So after that, every time you see an olive branch written in something, it's a reference to making peace with somebody. And so we're going to actually, at the Second Continental Congress, send over a letter to King George saying, you've done things, it's a great breakup letter. We've done things, you've done things, but let's try and fix this. We know this relationship is not going to work. It's like half the relationships y'all are in. We just know. With the Olive Branch Petition, it gets a response from King George saying they are traitors and will be brought to justice. If you know what a traitor, the justice for a traitor is, it's death. And so basically said, you're going to die. You're going to die. And that's a great quote and everything, but actually if you read on in the letter, it gets a little more detailed. It's not just you're going to die. He actually describes the way you're going to die in the letter. And before I jump into the letter, I got to tell you, this is one of the greatest scenes. If you've ever seen the movie National Treasure, this is my favorite scene when they're in the ballroom and they're trying to get her prints on the glass. And he hands her a glass so he can get her prints. And then she says, what do we toast to? And he says, to high treason. And then as they're clicking glasses, if you listen carefully, he says this next line, which most of us didn't catch, or we thought Nicolas Cage was a psycho nut. And he is in personal life, but not in the movie. But what Nicolas Cage says then, he says, we drink to high treason. And then he says, may we be hung, our bellies cut open, our stomach insides fall out, and we watch them burn. And then he clinks glasses. You probably didn't catch that because that's a messed up statement. Because guess what King George's response is? We're going to hang you for what you're doing. And not just like the hanging where they snaps your neck and it's over quickly. We're going to do the strangulation kind where it pulls you up slowly and you're dangling there. And it takes about a minute and a half to die this way. It's a very nasty way to die because the first thing that happens when you crush the larynx is you poop and pee yourself. Don't go home and try that. Please don't go home and try that because the whole crushed larynx thing's no fun. But you immediately will poop and pee yourself. And that was actually a kind of humiliation thing that went along with this. But he says, we're going to hang you by the rope, pulling you up strangulation kind. Then we're going to take a knife and cut your belly open so that your insides, your intestines, fall to the ground. Then we're going to light them on fire so that the last thing you see is your insides burning. Did it sound like the olive branch worked? Doesn't. That's why we know the war is on. They're not thinking that yet. If you ever try and make peace with a friend and you're like, hey, I'm sorry I said something. I know you said something. Can we have peace? And the person looks at you and says, I want to watch you die and your insides burn. That relationship's over. Just so you know. Just helping you out on that one in case that happens to you. So when we hear the response of, we want to watch your insides burn, although, by the way, couldn't do it with me, it would be a bonfire. That's a fat joke. I hope you got it. So when we realize it's not going to work, the Continental Congress decides we need to form an army. We have had militias in all these little states and stuff, but we're going to need one guy in charge of all the militias so that when they send an army over here, we can go army for army with them. You can almost feel every eye in the room at that moment go and turn and look at George Washington, because he's the only man, because of what happened in the French and Indian War, that has the experience to lead an army and the ability and the cunningness. And you're about to see here in just a second, he's going to be very cunning when he first steps into. So May 10th, 1775, we decide army and George is in charge. George is going to get his stuff together and start to head to Boston. But before he gets to Boston, things are going to break loose over there again. A little thing called Bunker Hill. Now, remember, Boston is under the Intolerable Act because of the Boston Tea Party, where they have shut down the harbor. They have taken away their form of government. 1 out of 3 soldiers, about 7,000 in a city of 20,000, 7,000 soldiers in that city. They are so infringing on their rights at this point. And the last one part of that was if the soldier commits a crime, they get sent to England to have trial, which means they will be found innocent. So they can do anything they want to it. So these acts are so intolerable, people have got to do something. And if you notice, it's June of 1775 now. The Intolerable Act started in 1774, which means a lot of these guys haven't had a job for a year. Haven't had, their children are starving. Their things are, it's horrible in Boston right now. And so Boston, even though George is on the way, once again, with news the way it travels, they don't know George is on the way. And the Sons of Liberty decide to take things into their own hands. What they do on the night of June 16th, they go out to, now let me explain this to you real quick, Breed's Hill. You know how many battles were fought at Bunker Hill? 0. It's going to come out, you'll see it at the end, a kid makes a mistake. After the battle is over, he's going to run in town, tell them that there was a battle on Bunker Hill. It's the hill right next to it, called Breed's Hill. I've been to Massachusetts. You can see in Boston, you go up and there's a sign that says Breed's Hill. You go to the top of Breed's Hill and there's the Bunker Hill Monument, which is kind of confusing, but they have signs explaining it. And I already knew that. But the Battle of Bunker Hill is actually fought on Breed's Hill. What they do that night is they dig trenches all along the top of that hill. That's a big hole to be digging at night because they got to get it done in one night. They're taking the dirt out of the trench. They're piling it in front of them. And then they are taking and putting wood and sticks and stuff on that. They actually even built a little fortification in the center out of old logs and stuff like that. Nothing nailed together, made anything solid, but they're just trying to basically draw the British out and show them that we're not going to play games with them because they want Boston back. So that next morning, the British gets up and General Howe looks out, and there is once again Sons of Liberty. You just got to love them. There's about 200 guys on a hill right outside of Boston. It's right above Griffin's Wharf where the Boston Tea Party happened. And General Howe looks up, and you got all these guys looking down out in these trenches, guns pointed into Boston. And I'm sure General Howe at this point was like, you know what, let's go teach them a lesson. Let's go fix this problem. So he gets together 2,000 British redcoats to take on these 200 Sons of Liberty. So quite outnumbered. And they don't have a lot of ammunition. That's the biggest problem we have at the beginning is we don't have the supplies. So as they march towards the hill and everything, and at the bottom of the hill you got 2,000 guys. They're forming up, making lines. They're 2, 3 deep and everything. And they are shoulder to shoulder. And if you know anything about how the war worked back in the old days, they would literally be 200 yards apart, volley 4 or 5 times back and forth, move a little closer, about 100 yards, volley 4 and 5 times back and forth, and then keep your gun loaded because you got one last shot. Everybody run into each other, start stabbing, kicking, biting, whatever you got to do. And you should have one shot left, maybe take one person down. The British, they start lobbing and volleying back and forth. We don't return a single bit of fire. And I'm sure at this point they think, oh, these guys, we've got them. The British then start marching up the hill. Israel Putnam, the man in charge right now, and what he does is he tells them, do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Listen for me to yell fire. The reason he's doing this is we don't have a lot of ammo. Every shot has to count. And so what happens is, and we did it in my room, and you might want to try this in your room or something, where the teacher stands on one side and somebody starts walking forward until you literally can define that their eyeball is there and the white all the way around it. That's about 12 feet away is what happened in each of the classrooms with me. You think that they're going to be 12 foot within close and you haven't fired yet. It's a good thing that a lot of the pants were brown back then, because if not, you're making your pants brown. I'm just saying, with that much soldiers marching towards you, here's the reason this happens. Why? When they get within about 12 feet and Israel yells fire and every one of them boom, shoots at the same time. Remember, he said these guns aren't accurate. The ball, as it bounces down through, if it's going up, we'll go up. If it's going down, we'll go down. You hope it goes straight and you get a good shot. Well, the thing is, if you're in the ground with your gun pointed up like this and you fire, and they're only 12 feet from you, if the ball is going down, you just rip the kneecap off. You are going to hit them. If the ball is going up, you just went through the top of their head and out the skull. And if it's going straight, it's going right into their gut and they're dead. These are 69 caliber Brown Bess balls. They're, the size of a quarter. You can imagine the entry room, the size of a quarter, the exit wound, you don't even want to know. And so what happens, you've got British soldiers that are used to seeing carnage, but they have not seen carnage like this, to where 200 guns are fired up close within 12 feet. Body parts are flying. Heads are coming open. I don't want to get gross or anything. If you want to get gross, just pull up the Sweet Plains yearbook and look at it. But it is disgusting. Once again, not the yearbook. Back to the story now. It is disgusting because body parts are just going everywhere. How do we know it was so disgusting? The British soldiers literally turn and run back down the hill. They just saw a bunch of their guys die. General Howe forms them back up again. They volley a whole bunch more times. They've got the ammunition. And then they start us up the hill towards us again. Israel does the same thing. Don't fire till you see the whites. Listen for me. Listen for me. And that had to be so nerve-wracking to be sitting there with that going on. But once again, they get within about 12 feet and boom, goes off again like that. Body parts flying. It's like watching Mr. Nichols eat a chicken. It's things going everywhere. Then when they run back down the hill a second time, this time General Howe's like, listen, you guys are going to take this hill regardless, and sends them back up the hill again. This time, guys, we're down to one shot. We had enough shots at this point for 3 per soldier. That's all we had. You're not going to take the town this way. We knew we weren't going to win, but we were going to show them what we were, that we're not going to back down. And so this time they come up the hill 12 feet from us. Boom, everybody fires their rifles. As soon as they fire their rifles, turn around, jump out of the trench, and run home. Get home quickly. Why they're not going to be caught? Those British soldiers, once again, the carnage everywhere, have to climb over the sticks, down into the trench, back out of the trench to begin to chase them back that way down the hill. And that's actually headed towards Bunker Hill, which is why the kid could have got mistaken. But the battle is on Breed's Hill. Those guys are able to get away. So it is quite a victory for the colonists in a way, but the victory is actually listed as a victory for the British because they do take the hill. But if you look at the numbers, they are literally going to DRT, dead right there, 1,000. You're going to have about 600 wounded. Usually in a battle, you have more wounded than you do dead. These are a lot more dead than wounded because they literally were only 12 feet from you when the bullet went off. And the British were shoulder to shoulder in lines. One musket ball actually would take about 2 or 3 guys out. That was not smart for them to charge a position like that. But once again, they hadn't had anybody wait till 12 feet from you before letting their ammunition fly. So colonists are going to lose 100 men because they are going to shoot at us while we're running, and we've got some people die like that, but most of us get away and everything. And that's when the boy runs into town and tells the printing press they're fighting at Bunker Hill. He gives some very good, accurate information other than the fact he gets the whole place that it happens wrong. But once again, remember, Ben Franklin, charge of the newspapers, one paper going, and it goes through all the towns, so you have the same story in each town. Sam Adams, charge of committee of correspondence, making sure those letters are read and everything. The story then filters out from Boston the very next day. I mean, not even the next day. It's sent out that day by runners. And it is going to spread all over the colonies, and everybody knows there was a battle at Bunker Hill is what they think. And so that's why even today we have never changed the name of it. That kid destroyed history with that, but yeah, it's called the Battle of Bunker Hill. We've kind of made him mad again. This relationship's not getting any better. There's some great pictures if you have a chance to look at them. You can see the calibers at the top and everything. And if you look at the guns on the left, you'll see that is the British gun. The next gun is the French gun, which a lot of Americans will be using during the war because Big Ben Pimpin is over there getting us supplies by Brown Chicken Brown Cow. Also, at the bottom is a Kentucky rifle. Those have an extra long barrel. In fact, they have one called the Kentucky Long Rifle, where the barrel is 5 to 5.5 foot long. That adds for accuracy when you're in a battle. So there is, once again, you got a copy right there of the map of Boston, and you can see Breeds Hill right there near where the harbor is, and then Bunker Hill is off to the side, and there was nothing happening on Bunker. June, it's a month later, George finally gets to Boston. Once again, supply shortage, that's our biggest problem. So George gathers up all the ammunition, all the powder. We have 36 barrels. Just so you know, that's 9 shots per soldier. We are not going to win a war like this unless Ben can get some gunpowder sent over here. And Ben, working hard, well, not really working hard. Y'all know what I mean? Yeah. But Ben, doing what he does, ends up getting us gunpowder, and 90% of the gunpowder is eventually going to come from France throughout the war. We did not have it at the beginning. This is 9 shots per soldier. And so what happens then, Washington pulls a couple guys aside and says, I want you to go into town. I don't want you to have this conversation at a tavern. Pulls a couple more guys aside, says, I'll go into town. I want you to have this conversation outside of a bakery. Kills it 4 or 5 times with several guys, sends them to different parts of the town. There is 1 out of 3 people is a British soldier. So guess what? Who's going to overhear your conversation wherever you're at? British soldiers. And he lets them know, make sure you're sitting near a British soldier or around a British soldier when you guys start talking so that they can overhear. And what these guys do in town is they start talking about, boy, we're going to need to get some wagons out there. I mean, George Washington has 1,800 barrels of gunpowder. Boy, I don't know what we're going to do with it all. We got to make sure we got all this gunpowder moved because we have 1,800 barrels. Well, if the guy at the tavern hears it, and he goes and tells his boss 1,800, and the guy at the bakery hears it, goes and tells his boss 1,800, the guy on the street corner goes and tells his boss 1,000. Guess what the boss ends up believing? That George Washington has 1,800 barrels of gunpowder. Remember, it's not till we're going to have come up later on, but you notice there's no battle going on right now? You want to know why? Even though the British are in Boston, they're scared to death to come out of Boston because they think we have 1,800 barrels. So what George is able to immediately do is slow up the war until we're able to start getting some supplies. And that's what we're going to talk about next on the next time. But George is, once again, he's a genius. If they would have came out, the war would have been over in June of 1775, and we would all be speaking English. Well, I mean, kind of, not people from Pelico, I'm just saying. But, so they don't come out. We're not being messed with. This is George being the great general he was again. And I would notice that at the start, because it's a question right there for the test, our greatest weakness was supply shortage. We've hit the 20-minute mark, so I'm going to hush up, and I will see you tomorrow.